cup of coffee, then I'll go. I just drop by and let you know that I'm leaving town tomorrow. I'll cause you no more sorrow. I'll just have a cup of coffee, then I'll go. I brought the money like the lawyer said to do. It won't replace all the heartaches I've caused you. It won't take the place of loving you, I know. I'll just have a cup of coffee, then I'll go.
Welcome to the channel, Grand Colombia. Welcome back to Coffee Time Live. In this, hopefully going to be a beautiful day here in Armenia, Colombia. It's been a little rainy lately, the last couple of days, but not bad. It's been an odd year. It's been an odd year all over South America. And fortunately, we didn't have a day like Medellin, and I'll show you that a little later in the video. And thanks to Rob for that. It's also Mother's Day here in Colombia. Big day, one of the biggest shopping days of the year. I think it's the second most commercialized day of the year. But, you know, that's cool. That's good. A lot of people had good mothers. And for those people, it's a great day. Okay. Today we're going to cover some headlines in Quindío. A lot of weeks, there's not much going on here, but there's a bunch of things that I wanted to talk about or point out, at least mention the headlines. So we're going to do that. First, the fincas, an update on the fincas. I don't have everything officially, I don't have photos ready and things like that, but we have fincas available. So if you live here in if you live here in Colombia, email me if you're interested. And if you want to schedule 3 or 4 days, email me. You're basically going to have your choice of a couple types in different areas. And the 2 types are going to be pretty nice, pretty comfortable, somewhat luxurious, definitely very nice. And the other is going to be more rustic, more traditional, more of a working farm. You might even walk through a little mud. And so, you know, you're going to have the option, because I have people asking about both. And so that's what's been taking a while, setting these things up. So if you're interested in more of a rustic functioning farm, you know, let me know, and we'll get you in that. And remember, these are farms. These are going to be somewhat isolated. So, you know, I could take you to them, and you can also combine it, you know, this orientation that I do over the course of a couple days. You can combine it with that, where I could pick you up at the airport, you know, give you a tour around of the basic things so you kind of get your sea legs under you, introduce you to a number of people here that can help you, you know, get settled in. Basically give you some preparatory lessons on what it takes to get going. What I will say about it, to toot my own horn, and I keep getting feedback from people that I've done this with, and I'm told kind of the same thing over and over, is that the money we spent, we saved in the ease and escaping the hassles and getting everything done quickly. Basically, I can get people settled in with their apartment, their visas, and I don't do their visas, but direct them off to the right place where they won't have any issues within a month. You know, you got your schedule in hand, you got your apartment, you're good to go. So I have the ability now to combine that with stays at fincas. A lot of you have been asking me over the last few years about this. So, you know, hopefully all the effort done, there'll actually be people interested in it. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to the news. All right, first of all, is there crime? Is there crime? You know, the big thing. Well, of course there's crime. And sometimes when I read something about the crime, I actually have to kind of chuckle. They busted this guy. I forget, he's got a nickname. All drug dealers, they get their nicknames. And it's a forgettable nickname, but this guy is like the kingpin, you know, around Armenia. And they busted him. And they seized a large quantity of cocaine. Now I'm going to show you this photo and tell me if you can spot the large quantity of cocaine. Yeah, that's it. Those two little bowls there. But that's a big bust here in Armenia. This is not Medellin. And this is like the big guy. What's it say? Captured for distributing large amounts of cocaine in Armenia. Yeah, so I guess Armenia is going to be dry for a couple hours. I don't know. It just cracked me up. I do want to mention Juka, as always, sent his contribution. 2 of them first thing in the morning, and he mentioned Happy Mother's Day. And hello, Juka. What is that, Terry? This damn thing it just quits working. Terry Riley, Happy Mother's Day to all. And Sam and Peg, hello, how you doing? Morning all, nice to see you back. Okay, and what's next? Oh, this was pretty cool. Now, Colombia is broken up into 32 departments. And what's a department? Think of it like a state. So there's 32 states that make up Colombia. Well, when you have 32 of anything, you're going to have a pecking order. And the pecking order will be based on a whole bunch of things, but efficiency of government, some sort of happiness index, all kinds of things they put together to create this scoring mechanism to determine what's the best place to live. Yeah, you guessed it. The Department of Condillo, right here, Armenia, it's the best in the country. First time ever it's rated that high, but there's been a lot of good things. I'm going to mention a couple here. It's pretty awesome. You know, a lot of it is the mayor that I tell you about. This drug bust that, you know, there's a reason this is the big fish as little as he is, because they're pretty active about keeping things safe and not overtaken by turkeys like this guy. So, you know, a lot to be said for it. Which leads me to the next headline. Now, well, I'll explain it. Village Fund woman, this is a translation, is waiting for Canadian entrepreneurs. What this actually is there was a fund that was set up for rural women because they're the most difficult to find employment. Men, there's always construction jobs. Women, it's not so much. And so they struggle more than anybody else. And so there was a fund set up that, hey, if you want to start a business, like this woman, she started a business, she needed a sewing machine and some other things to get going. There's a fund that will get them going. And they've been doing it for a number of years. And what they found is there's actually been a return on the money that they put in. And so it keeps going. And every year they're funding about 100 people. So you say, well, what about everybody else? Is it going to be like the US where it's all divided and, it's like one group gets everything, and what about this poor guy? Well, there are also funds for that. But the reason I bring this one up is because it is the most difficult position. Particularly if you're an older woman living out in the country, you've got it harder than anybody else. And my point here is that there's help for everyone in this way, but it's not like just hand over. They have to, repay those funds. And what they're finding is that it's money well invested. They're getting a return on that. And so it just keeps going. So the initial funding certainly did its job. And it's very nice to have a program like that. More news. Now, this last couple years really exposed a few things in the medical system here in Quindío. In Calarca, it exposed some real corruption, and pretty much everybody in the hospital was fired. I mean, they went through and kind of cleaned house. It's a little city right next to Armenia. And it wouldn't have been exposed if it weren't for what went on. And God knows how long it had been going on. So the good news is they cleaned that up. But there are other issues that were exposed when you put pressure on a system that didn't have pressure before. And so they're taking advantage of this knowledge. And there's a lot of changes going on. But one of them is they've decided that the hospital, which is very small, in Salento, is not adequate. And they can't do anything with it because it's a, what do you call it, a heritage building? So they can't tear it down. They can't expand on it. And it's not suitable. So they're going to build a new hospital in Salento. There's no pictures, nothing to be a picture about. Later, you might want to stop and read this. But one of the interesting things that came out of the study for this hospital is expenses in the system in general. And so what they're doing is they're taking, instead of having administrators in every location, like Cordoba and Pijao and Salento and Finlandia, because they all have their clinics or hospitals, instead of having separate administrators, what they're going to do is have what you might call a regional administration. And so they're going to pull the administrators out of the hospitals and they'll make visits. But basically, it will be just stocked with doctors and nurses. And there's a fair amount of savings that will take place because of that. Say, well, what about the administrators? They're losing their jobs. Well, that's true, but there's actually a demand for their position all over Colombia, including in Armenia. So, they're going to land on their feet. But it's nice to see how they're really trying to make their system much more efficient. And so I was pretty happy to see that. It's going to be one administrative group, which is only a couple people, for every 3 or 4 towns. So it's pretty awesome. All right, what else we got? Oh, this is big news. Colombia is a big producer of rice, and the rice in the rice world is actually a pretty decent quality. They've been trying to export rice for years. They have plenty of rice to export, and they haven't been able to get through, and the market you want to get through to is the United States. They've been working on it for a number of years, and all the issues and barriers are now gone. It'll be no tariffs, just a kind of a clean, we get to sell it there. They started working on this plan about 5 years ago, and it's finally come to its conclusion. And so Colombian rice, starting in June, will be exported to the United States. And much of that rice, including the initial round of rice, is coming out of Quindío. So that's a big thing. It will ultimately, it will increase the income of the people doing the farming because of having more markets for it. They don't expect pricing really to change either way, but having more buyers is definitely a plus. Judy, good morning. How you doing? Coleman, Dallas, Texas. Got your feet stuck in the ground now. Robert Stewart, good morning from Austin, Texas. A lot of Texas boys in here. Okay. Now, I've got a video coming up probably Wednesday or Thursday, but it depends. I've got a couple potentially very busy days. And if that's the case, it'll probably be more to the end of the week. Now, this past week, a couple of videos I've been working on. I finally got out the supermarket video where I show you the 3 new supermarkets. I didn't really like that video, but I got a lot of really positive feedback on it. So, apparently, you guys like things that I don't necessarily like. I found it really boring, but then, to me, it's like a supermarket. What I don't really care. To me, they're all the same, but locations are interesting. So anyway, I appreciate the reception that I got on that. And another one that really surprised me, because interview videos tend to not do very well, probably because they tend to be a little on the boring side. But this guy who's facilitating VA medicine here in Colombia, now it's through a private organization. I don't know if you know how this works, if you got it in the video, but there's 2 places in the world that I'm aware of that you can go to a VA hospital. Now, they're not technically VA hospitals, but it's kind of like we'll call it like a franchise. And so it's the same as going to a VA hospital. You go in, you're treated the same, even though it's run by somebody else. But there's one in the Philippines, there's one in Panama. Well, the one in Panama was researching and then finally did open an office in Medellin, because in all of Colombia, there's an estimated 120 some thousand expats, and a certain percentage of those have veterans experience. So they wanted to set up something to accomplish that. So it's being done by a private entity, but it's with the approval of the VA. There's certain things that they have to go through, and so this is the guy that actually set it up in Medellin. And the reason he was here and I interviewed him is because he's scoping out a location over the next month or 2 to open a branch for the coffee region. It'll probably be in Pereira, because a lot of people think that's a central location. It isn't necessarily, because they're always forgetting about Ibagué. and that actually makes Armenia a little bit more central to all of them. But Pereira would be fine. And for people that are here you got your EPS, and I asked them that question, well, if you have your EPS, why bother? Well, there are some advantages if you have access to VA on top of that. So, it doesn't cost anything, so why not, right? So I did the interview with him, and I got a lot of very positive feedback on that. And it was watched by quite a few people, which again surprised me a little bit, because interviews tend to fall flat. I still do them because I think they're very useful. You know, we're not really entertainment, we're more about information. So anyway, those are the videos I did this week. This coming week, there's another one in the books. I don't know if I'll be able to get it out this week, but I definitely expect I'll be able to put out this next video. And how can I say this? Whoever comes here, we go by this place that at the entrance off of the main road between Armenia and Pareda. You take a right and you go down towards Salento. And on the hill, there's this big old gigantic burned out building. And everybody asks me, what is that? Because it's so you know, what was that? You know that there's a story there. Well, I've asked before, but Alfredo, sorry you're late. Well, we'll have you run a few laps, but that's all right. You're here now. Camilo, good morning from Colombia. Sorry about that, dude. I understand it's there's been some protests, teacher strikes or things like that over in that area. Anyway, I ask people about those structures, and I never get a story. And now I know why. I got tired of not knowing, and so I started digging. And I found out the story. I found out a lot more than I needed to know, but it's a pretty fascinating story, and there's a lot more to it than I ever expected. And there was somebody behind it. Picture this if you can. Picture a combination of Pablo, we don't say the last name, Trump, and John Lennon. And that would be the kind of guy that was behind that building. And it's a fascinating story, and I'm going to do a video on it. Maybe this will, if you've been here, maybe this will ring a bell. Here's the building. But there's a number of buildings. There's a whole bunch. It's like a compound. There's 16 small buildings around it. And the reason I wasn't getting much information on this is because unless you're as old as I am, Colombian, you didn't really remember this. And the whole situation's kind of thing that people don't really talk about. It was a different world. It was a different group of people. And it wasn't your everyday Colombian. So it wasn't a lost story, but it's not commonly known by most people here. Say, well, we heard there was some drug guy. And that's the most I ever got out of it. Well, that doesn't tell the story at all. So I'm going to do a video on that, and I'm going to enjoy that one. I love history anyway. And I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to enjoy it. So we got that coming up. Now, Robert, this morning, here in Cali, living the good life. Yeah, if you like too hot and filthy streets and... just teasing you. Okay, Robert, who was visiting Medellin last week, I think. He sent me these video clips from yesterday, this morning, just a little while ago. This is Medellin as of yesterday. I think you'll find this interesting.
Compañeros, glorieta de Monterrey. Inundado, vea. Monterrey. La regional. Carril derecho. Y allá está igual.
Papi, en San Diego, vea.
spill on aisle 1. That's bad. You know, I probably shouldn't complain when we get a little rain here. We got much better drainage. So that was, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Are you even on today? You're always on, but I didn't see you say good morning. But thank you. I appreciate it. All right. That's that. The travel insurance. I didn't realize this. Shame on me. But the travel insurance, that one, links it below. It's a very good price. It's only eligible for people up to including 69 years old. If you're over 69, they can't take care of you. There are others. I'll look into seeing if I can get that information, but the price is considerably more. You know, I go figure. So if you're over 69, you can't get this. But people have been getting it on a regular basis, and I've been getting really good feedback. So, as long as that's the case, I'll keep bringing them up and keeping the link in the description below. Mr. Anonymous, thank you. I appreciate the contribution. What else we got? Emil's apartment. The person who was renting it from the end of the month to when he comes, June 8th, when he returns with his wife, he had to change his dates. So Emil's apartment is open as of right now until June 8th. So May 8th to June 8th, it's open, it's available. As far as I know, nobody's jumped on it. Pretty much all of them come through me. So if you're interested, send me an email and I'll connect you up with him. I'm not the middleman. I just give you and him each other's information and send it from there. What else we got? Oh, there's my email. And that's it. That's the news for today. So we're going to, what are we going to do? We're going to do this. It's Q&A time. It's time to start asking your questions. Remember, 4 question marks first, then ask the question. Okay. It's time. It's time. Oddly, that was from me. I don't know why it came up anonymous. Well, you probably didn't put your name in there, but thank you. I appreciate it. I think there's a place you have to type your name, any notes. Okay, what else we got? You laugh at that. Not sure what golly. Anonymous. Another anonymous. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I will get to see who you are when I go into that program. It will show me, well, I think your email. So thank you for that. Any Q&As? I'm up for Q&As. Anything we talked about today or anything that comes to mind, or somebody sent me an email this morning, and I've talked about it so many times. But the thing is, you know, I might talk about a topic 7, 8, a dozen times, but when you got 700 videos, it can still get lost in the shuffle. So he asked me, you know, what's the best way to handle your retirement pay? A bank in Colombia or Capital One or the other retirement one that I'm not really fond of, but a lot of people like. Forget the name. And it depends. My personal advice is to use Capital One. It's been flawless for me. I'm going on 7 years with it. It really streamlines the whole situation. I had my debit card. Some information was stolen. I was notified. There were a couple charges from an Uber in California. Those were given right back to me. I called in and was given right back. And the cards actually probably tomorrow will show up and it'll get shipped off to me. So, it's pretty, yeah, Charles Schwab, thank you. Schwab, if you get along well with them, and I love the way I've dealt with Capital One. They've been amazing, and they will send the card directly here. This time around, I'm not having it done that way, but I've created backups to the backup. So when I lose my debit card now, it's no big deal. I can just keep on rolling. I've got a savings account. I can put everything into the savings account, and out of the savings account, I can transfer it into Rappi. And with Rappi, let's say I need $500. I can transfer it into Rappi, and then I use my Rappi debit card, and I can go get the cash out. I really don't even need the Capital One card anymore. So that's why I'm having it done the way I'm doing it. So there's that. All right, we got a couple here. Are places allowing people in without masks? Yeah, the mask thing was gone. The last vestige of masks was in the schools. That's gone. And hospitals. If you go into a hospital to visit somebody, they're still doing the mask thing. I don't get it, but that's what they're doing. What else we got? I'm back working after 2 years because of COVID. Well, that sucks. Have you visited the botanical gardens in Calarca? I have not, but I will be going and doing a video. It's on the list. Most of what I do and most of what I talk about, most of my videos are things that have an interest to me directly. That's why I say it's kind of like my life, my opinions, my adventure, and I focus on that. And I talk about things that I know about, and I avoid things that I don't really know about, or like taxes, where it's ever changing. It depends on so many different situations. So I'm not going to talk about it, because for one person it'll be good advice, and for somebody else I'm sending them down the wrong path. So I'm not going to do that. This is not the place for that. So I focus on things that mostly are of interest to me, but I make exceptions. I did the supermarket thing. I could really care less about the supermarkets, but I get where I'm thinking about going there. What do I have to look forward to? What do they look like? I get that, and so that's why I did it. Calarca has been one of those things. It's like I feel like I've been there because I've seen so much in video and in photographs, and I've had so many people that I know personally have gone and came back and told me about it. But I will go because it's pretty spectacular, and at some point, I gotta cover it. So I will go there and I will do a video on it. Is that garden the same as the butterfly sanctuary? Yes, it is. Yep. That's a really good system. Would have never thought of that. I'm not sure what, I don't know if we got kind of lag here. I'm not sure what system you're referring to. Okay. Any more questions? I'm getting my Charles Schwab ATM card. So far, I've been using my bank's ATM to make purchases only. Yeah, I mean, if you like Schwab, it honestly doesn't matter to me what you use. The only reason I promote Capital One is before I ever came here for a couple years, I planned what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And I had a lot of things in consideration. Banks keep getting bought up. I didn't want to get here, have a bank, have it get bought up, and all of a sudden things change. So, that was one of my considerations. I looked into Schwab, and Capital One seemed like that was going to be a pretty good answer. I mean, no fees. It had everything going for it. And so I got the Capital One, but at some point I tried to get Schwab, actually at 2 times. And it was so ridiculous, the hoops that I had to jump through. There's still $50 and I never got back from them. They require that you put money in the account, and then they denied my account. Don't know why. It's not like I have bad credit or anything, but I never got that money back. It was really difficult communicating with them, and that was a big warning bell. Now I've had other people say, "Well, I've never had these problems." That's great, but I did, and so my experience with them was that they sucked, and I will never try to deal with them again. But I recognize that just because I had a couple sucky experiences doesn't mean that everybody has that. And for whatever reason, there's people that love them. So it certainly is an option to consider. But if I'm going to recommend, I'm going to recommend the one that I know firsthand has been awesome. And so that's the reasoning behind it. Banking, what has worked incredibly well for me is opening up a Colombian bank account and having my pension deposited in pesos. Yeah, you can do that. I mean, it's an option. It's not my advice, but that doesn't mean anything. Advice is only advice. It's certainly a doable thing. There are some downsides to it. And I know you sent me the thing and you had the big laundry list of all these things that sounded hypocritical, but I hope you read that and I answered those for you. I think you just weren't understanding. And when I talk about opening a Colombian bank here and the tax thing, and because you mentioned that, I'm gonna address that. If you're a certain level here, you don't have to pay taxes. Now, technically, you're supposed to file for tax anyway, but what I discovered was that there are no penalties. So if you don't, there's no penalty for it if you don't owe any money. And so if you're at a threshold where you don't owe any money, you can stay out of the tax system. And the reason that's an advantage is because it tends to be a bureaucratic country. And once you're in a system, then there's actions that you have to go through every so often, or it can become problematic. And so if you don't have to be in a system, then why be in a system? Now, does that mean that it's going to ruin your life if you get into this? No, not at all. I like things to be as simple as possible. And if I don't owe anything, then why bring that on into my lap? So once you open a Colombian bank account, it kind of puts you in a situation where you have to go through those things. And so you don't have to do it financially. There's no benefit to it over what I'm doing, for example. There are fees in Colombian banks. I have no fees. So there's a whole range of nitpicky things. But of course, you can have a Colombian bank and be perfectly fine. But unless you have a business here, there's no actual reason that you have to do it. So when I give my advice, it's simply because it's simpler to do it the way I'm doing it. But that doesn't mean if you want to have a Colombian bank and, their debit card or whatever, you go for it. Do I have a girlfriend? No, I don't. I have dated a fair amount. When I was in Ecuador, I didn't date until I was getting ready to leave Ecuador. And there were a few people that I knew, and we went out. It wasn't until I got here in Manizales, I dated a couple times there. And here in Armenia, it's kind of come in waves, I'll see a few people. I've got quite a few friends, and if I want to have a a date or, you know, just kick back and watch TV with somebody and eat some popcorn or whatever, there's people that I can call for that. But as far as having an actual girlfriend, I haven't. And, you know, sometimes I think it would be nice. Other times I think it's nice being 100% with the only obligations to myself, you know, time and like that. So I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying the way it is right now. Doesn't mean it won't change. Some of you know I thought I had a girlfriend for a while, but you know, I kind of ruined it. It's entirely on me. But you know, I think there's a reason we do those things. Colombian credit card fees and peanuts, access to banks if there's a problem, et cetera, et cetera. No, I get that. I get what you're saying, and like I say, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not something I care to get into. But if I were having issues, like what the worst thing that can happen to me is I lose my debit card. Well, I've got ways to get around that now. It's really it's not problematic. But even if I weren't doing what I'm doing, I can always have like World Remit for $2 or $3.99. You know, send me $1,000 and pick it up at, you know, Davi Vienda counter. So it really isn't an issue. It was an issue once, but it was a learning curve. Now I know all kinds of different ways to get around it. So having a Colombian bank isn't going to be of benefit either way. It won't change anything. For me, as far as ease goes. And the fees, they may be peanuts, but those things add up, and it depends on the bank. Now, Davi Vienda is actually a pretty decent bank, and if I were to go with a bank, it'd probably be Davi Vienda. I used to think Colpatria, but the more I deal with banks here, I've become a kind of a fan of Davi Vienda. But the one I would never touch would be Bank Colombia, because they remind me of Bank of America. It's like they've got a fee for every time you breathe. Everything has a fee attached to it. They have ridiculous amounts of charges for different things, and I'm just not a fan of that. Let's see. I'm a newcomer. I've been here for just a month in the Cesar department. Well, welcome to Colombia. What is the tax threshold for earnings? Again, didn't I say I'm not gonna talk about taxes? You can find that information. It's not a set amount. There is a chart, but you have to look beyond the chart because there's exceptions to the chart. And I have no idea what your situation is. I know what mine is, and so I operate based on mine. And if I were to tell you, okay, the way it is mine, I know damn well I'm giving some people bad information because I've read those tax laws or regulations. I've read them, and it's quite complicated as far as who's going to fit into it or not. Somebody earning less money than me could owe a tax. So it's a combination of things. So you got to figure it out for yourself. Canada has a tax agreement with Colombia while USA doesn't. Play the guitar? No guitar online. You know, if I were to sit here and play, I don't know, pick a song, I would get a copyright strike, even if it's not that group playing. It didn't used to be like this, but if I were to, let's say I sat here and I played Stairway to Heaven, I get copyright strike on me because that's not my song. Used to be, you could do your own version of a song. You can't do it anymore. And some are worse than others. Some of the worst restrictions come from the Beatles, actually, my favorite group. Thank you, Lauren. I just want to say that about banking, instead of leaving the impression of a Colombian bank is akin to cutting one's arm off. No, not at all. I hope I've made it clear now, my reasoning, but it doesn't mean it's your reasoning. You have to look at your particular situation. But here's the good news. No matter what your situation is, even if your text, let's say you've got a couple $1,000s income every month, and let's say you're eligible where you have to pay a tax, and you put all of this together, and you got a Colombian bank, all of this, you're still better off than most anywhere else you'd be in the world. You know, the thing is, if I were required to pay a tax for certain things, I wouldn't be crying about it. I'm not going to volunteer to pay tax if I don't have to. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not wealthy. But the privilege of living here, it's what's the alternative? Life isn't free. And but they take in consideration, you know, a retirees here, and okay, a lot of retirees don't have a massive amount of money. It's not like we're rich. We're not going to live like kings on, you know, whatever, but we can have a good life here. We're spending money. We're spending every month. All the money we make goes into the economy, and if I weren't here, that money wouldn't be going into the economy. On top of that, all of these things that I do, you know, it's like you come here and, hey, you got anybody that can clean my apartment? How do I get my visa? How do I find an apartment? I don't do real estate. I don't do visas. I don't do any of that stuff. But I know people that do. I don't get kickbacks on those. So when I refer those off to people, they're making that money. They're setting their price. I'm not telling them how much to charge or whatever. I'm just connecting you up with good people that you can rely on. That's it. And so in my case, I'm not only spending my money, but there's a lot of people that are working here as a result of me being here that either wouldn't have work or wouldn't have as much work. And so I look at this, I'm pretty proud about what I do. You know, depends on how you want to look at it, but I'm pretty proud of what I do because I've got a circle of people here of the number 30 or so that their lives are better off because I'm here. And I like that. I like the feeling of that, and I'm proud of doing it. And so I'm not the only one that does that. There's people that come here on retirement and they're doing volunteer work, different things like that. And so that money can be compounded in various ways. Money isn't always just money. And Colombia is aware of that. And you know, so they don't want us to get squeezed. They want people to come here. They want it to be, there's a reason the laws are the way they are. And a lot of people tend to look at the downside. Well, you know, if I go there because of the US and here, I might have to pay a tax and whatever, and it can amount to 15%. And there's no way I'm going to do that. But if you take the overall picture, there's few places in the world that it's actually going to be better. Now, again, individual circumstances, you got to look at it. What else we got? Some number. What bank do you use? This Da Vivienda. Oh, well, there you go. I can understand why you're happy with that bank and that choice. I thought about a year ago, I thought seriously about getting an account with them. I was a little frustrated at the time. Now I found so many different options. I have no need for it. But at the time, I was seriously considering it. And I probably would have. I made an appointment to sit down with somebody with the intention I would probably open an account. And what happened was they canceled the appointment because something had happened. And it affected me too. So I was thinking, well, I probably can't go. And they ended up canceling the appointment. And then after that, I just didn't do it. But I was that close to opening an account with Da Vivienda. And back then, I looked at the BBVA thinking, well, that's a North American bank here, except they're completely separate. So the idea that in my head that could overcome some of the issues, it wasn't going to do anything for me. Colpatria, that's actually owned by Scotiabank out of Canada. I considered them, but they've got some money and never got, it's still to this day, it didn't get it back to me. And dealing with that and the bureaucracy and the unprofessionalism that I had to deal with even after I climbed the ladder, I just said, it left a bad taste in my mouth. But Davi Vienda has been pretty awesome. And I had a couple issues and they helped me through it. They've just been great. So, you know, I have to say, if you're going to look at a Colombian bank, based on what I've experienced with them, it's been pretty positive. I pay all my bills, EPS, rent online, maintain banking in Canada with second income deposited there for the reason of having second access to cash. Yeah, I pay, I use Rappi. It's not the same as a bank. However, I can use it in the ways that I would use a bank. You know, I've got a credit card with them. I've got a debit card with them. I can deposit money. It's not as flexible as with a bank, but it's all I need. I don't need beyond it. And so I'm doing kind of Colombian banking without a bank. So, you know, I get where you're coming from, and that's part of my backup. And with Rappi, I can pay pretty much everything online. I can do it right here on this computer. I can just sit down, pay my bill, and be done with it. So, you know, there's that. If Rappi didn't exist, yeah, this is a good question. I haven't really thought about it, but if Rappi didn't exist, and I lived here for, let's say, the 4 years that I've been living here, would I get a bank? I probably would. Because you need backup. You need secondary. I've actually got 4 different ways to, you know, plan A, plan B, plan C. You need to have that because you never know. I probably would in that case, but I found a middle road that I'm really happy with. Luz was so helpful with the information about the visa. My wife spoke with her. We will use her when we move in about 4 to 6 months. Luz has been awesome. I've been using her. Well, I first used her 4 years ago, and I used her because she was recommended to me, and there were 6 or 7 people at the time that were vouching for her. Since then, I've sent, I don't know how many people, you know, that I've sent through there, and not a single breath of any kind of problem. All I get is how fantastic she is. She just makes everything. I mean, how easy is it to walk into an office with a couple documents, or you can even email before you get there. You pay her the money, and then a few weeks later, you're done. And as a matter of fact, with the electronic visa, you don't even have to go back to pick up your passport. I mean, you're just done. And she makes the appointment so you can go get your cedula. It just doesn't get easier than that. Nobody's, you know, I see in the Medellin Facebook all the time about all these people that are getting denied. I'm not seeing anybody get denied. Nobody's getting denied. If you have your information and she'll tell you what you need, you're not going to get denied. You know, that's something that's like, you really have to beware of things that you read on Facebook. I don't know why there's people on the Medellin expat Facebook that keep putting out this false information about how Colombia is changed. They're making it so difficult to get visas. All these people are having problems. I don't know if they're doing that intentionally or if they're just not really paying attention. I know there were a couple YouTubers complaining, except they will tell you, actually, they might complain, but when it gets down to it, there's 2 of them. And in both of those cases, it was something they failed to do. Well, they have rules here, you know, so you gotta follow the rules. But if you follow the rules, you provide what you're supposed to, you provide it when you're supposed to, it's it's pretty simple. I don't know. I guess it's from people. If you did it in Ecuador, like I had to do it, you would look at this and say, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable! It's awesome." Yeah, Colpatrick treated me like shit. I would never recommend them. Yeah, I was really disappointed. Their customer service is really a customer disservice. It was very frustrating. They cost me $250. Never got it back. I fought with them. I took so many trips over to their office. I climbed the ladder, and it just, they don't care is what it boiled down to. It's like, yeah, we got the money and we don't have to do anything. I had all the proof. I had the slip. I had the transaction number. It didn't matter. It was very frustrating. I tried opening an account with Rappi 3 times. Gave up. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody else, it was either you or somebody else told me that they were having trouble opening Rappi. I don't understand it, because it was the easiest thing. All I did was I downloaded the app on my phone. And from there, I connected up my debit card to it. Initially, that was it, to fund it. Since then, I've got a debit card. There's a couple cards that I've got attached to it, just for backup to backup to backup. But it was real simple. And the credit card, I told you guys about it. Just came one day, just out of the blue, just arrived on my doorstep. Never asked for it. That was nice. So that's always it's always nice to have $1,000 back in case if you run out of funds and you can't get them for a week or whatever, that you've got that. Well, I get that. If I had the problem you had with it, I'd hate them too. For me, they've been a godsend. I absolutely love Rappi. I would do advertisements for Rappi if they, I would do advertisements for them if they ever asked me, because I've been so happy with them. I need her for my dual citizenship. Maybe the Colombian government is denying those obvious expats. Well, that would be an interesting thought, but no, they're not doing it. The people making that claim never have actual examples. They're lying. They're just making up a story. Imagine that on the internet. But, let's see. Can I apply for Colombian permanent residence remotely from the U.S. or give you local contact my info to apply on my behalf? No, first you have the visa to live here, your residency visa, which would be a retirement visa or a business visa or different types, could be an education visa. And that's for a period of time. Once you've hit 5 years, which for me is next year, you can then apply for permanent residency. But that means you're living here. It doesn't mean you're locked in. I mean, you can go other places, but it means you're actually living here. So, I'm not going to tell you whether you can do it online or not, but I think you're thinking that you can sit back where you are, apply online, and then arrive and your permanent residency is done. It doesn't work that way. You can do your initial visa from where you are. I find it's actually simpler here in talking to people that have done it out of country versus here. Now, that's because of who we're dealing with. She just makes it so painless. And her fee is really, really small. And it saves you all kinds of, like, even where you are, you got to make a trip somewhere. You got to go to a consulate and all that. Here, it's just you go to her office and she takes care of everything. So there's no advantage to it but you can get your initial visa from wherever you're living. Kentucky Derby was amazing. I could care less. If you haven't caught it, it's worth looking at the underdog. You know, I grew up with horses. I'm pretty good on a horse. I had a horse when I was a kid, but hated cleaning up after them. They represented a lot of slave labor, but things like that, I just never got into it. I don't know, just never piqued my interest. A lot of rodeo in my family. Never really cared too much about it. We'd go to a rodeo. I'd be picking up some girl and I'd be hiding behind the bleachers with the girl and not paying attention to what was going on. So, all the way live 360 or live 360. Love the channel, brother. Shout out to Game Time who turned me on to it. Thanks, appreciate it. Definitely not entertaining, but I do try to be good information. Okay, Alfredo. So this person, he's living in 360. You're probably in my apartment. If you bought it, bum, put me out in the street. Thanks for visiting here. This is the man living the Colombian dream. Yeah, it is. Doesn't get old for me. I really love living here. Hello, Lauren. No, it's Loren actually. I don't get to go live. I have other morning obligations. Church. I've been following you for 5 years. My interest is more in Ecuador. My fiance is from over there. Yeah, I lived there for just over 3 years. If you ever have any questions, give me a holler. But there's over 200 videos about Ecuador. I was all over Ecuador, north, south, out to the coast. I never went to the jungle because if you know me, you know my passion. I don't hate much in this life, but mosquitoes are one thing I really hate. And so I never went to the Amazon because mosquito. And it's, hot. I'm not a fan of hot. But Ecuador is a beautiful place. It's just a place that, looking back, I compromised far too much to live there. There were too many issues for me. And the only reason I had a good life there, but it was because of about a dozen good friends that I made there. They're all local people. Some few from Venezuela, but mostly local people. They were really good people and gave me a good, well-rounded life. It was very, very, it was very comfortable. It's hard to break through that because, particularly if you're in Cuenca. But I just got tired of the compromises. But the altitude thing really kind of did me in. But I was already 1 foot out because of everything is a compromise. It's like every time you turn around, you just can't get what you want. You can't do what you want. And you have this oppressive government that can't decide how deep into socialism they want to go, but they have an effect on so many things. The Tranvia, what a fiasco that was. It's like I was there through all that. Didn't get to see it finished because I left just before that. But, I watched them pour the concrete, and then less than a year later, the concrete would be falling apart, and they'd have to go back and redo it all over again. Watching buildings. Near where I lived in a house in a nice neighborhood, and there was a building it was a 2-story building, kind of like you'd see in the U.S., except it was brick instead of wood. And it had a 3rd floor, there's one of those things that's more like a gabled roof, so more of a storage or a spare bedroom, but duck your head kind of thing. The house was only a couple years old, and one day that third floor just collapsed, into the house because there's no standard on concrete, there's no standard on construction. I just got so tired of constantly seeing these kind of things, and I wanted to come somewhere where I could step back into the first world, and a lot of people want to go native, and if that's the case, then there you go for it. But if you really want to be in civilization, then Colombia is probably going to be more for it. I don't talk about Ecuador that much, but whenever you're on the channel, if you got a question at Q&A time, feel free. I'm in Pennsylvania. Alfredo turned me onto the channel, going to retire soon. He suggested you look into, oh, I see, okay. I'm thinking Philippines or maybe Colombia. Well, I was in the Philippines some years ago, and for me, it's too hot, it's too muggy. It's pretty unbearable. If you're really into if you really want to go to a place where you've got every 18 to 22-year-old unattached girl swooning over you, Philippines is good for that. But it's driven by abject poverty. And so, I don't know, I think it's more, is it taking advantage of their situation? Well, they're looking to have you take advantage of the situation. But I just was never really comfortable in that environment. I wasn't there, retired. It was some years ago, but I saw what was going on, and so it wasn't the best environment. And can you find a good loyal partner and stuff like that? Yeah, but living there it surrounds really that kind of topic. And for me, I'm more interested in whether I have somebody with me or not. How is my life? And if you were to remove a female partner from the Philippines, it doesn't have much going for it. And so I think that's something to take into consideration. You can say the same thing about Thailand. It's like all the perverts go to Thailand. Do you really want to be living in a place where, the minute you say you're living in Thailand, people think you're a pervert? Well, I don't know. It's like, but it is a beautiful country. I've been to Thailand also. It's a beautiful country. Vietnam has things, but you're also on the other side of the world, and it's a part of the world that could very realistically blow up in the next few years. Do you really want to be there with that kind of thing? So there's a lot that, for me, would take it off the table. I've been to Colombia before, as you know. I lived here 20 years ago for not quite a year. I fell in love with it then, and it's still an awesome place. Which country is more in line with free-spirited people who don't need a lot of government interference? Colombia or Ecuador? Oh my God, it's not even close. What can I say about Ecuador? Ecuador, I used to describe the two like this. Ecuador is a country of farmers, and Colombia is a country of cowboys. There is a independent spirit here. You see it on the street. Yeah, there's poverty. Of course there's poverty. There's 20-some% of the people are living in below the poverty line. Not far off from what is in the U.S., but there's definitely poverty here. But what are those people doing? Are they sitting back whining about it? No, they're out in the street hustling. They're going to sell a cigarette. They're going to sell a bag of candy, individual pieces of candy. They're going to find something to do to get by, to make a living. They're very energetic. And in Ecuador, it's more, what can we get the government to do for us? I think they kind of got into that mentality over a few years when they were converting the country to somewhat socialized. And, they've got a one-payer government medical system that every year is going bankrupt and it's terrible medical care. Here you've got a government managed, well, not managed, well, they're involved in it, but it's actually run by private companies, and it's always profit-based. And of course, this one's about 25% of the cost of the one that always is going bankrupt in Ecuador. So I like the fact that this is a very long-running, despite all of the issues and civil wars, it's been a long-running, stable republic. And I appreciate that here, and you see it. You feel a freedom here. And you can actually feel it. And I like that. What are the correct Powerball numbers? 3. Us Americans in general aren't used to surfing between the red tape lines. Much of the world is red tape. Colombia, fortunately, is nothing like it was when I lived here before. It was bad. Now they've streamlined a lot of it, but it still exists. It's in the culture. You just have to really be patient. Good concept to live by in any Latin American, Central, South America. Everything takes 3 tries. Not a bad slogan. I had the same experience in Indonesia at the beach, hit on by 2 young girls and young guys. Yeah, that's kind of the Philippines. The bright side is if you're looking for a girlfriend or a plaything or whatever it is, you step off the plane in 5 minutes, you'll have your choice of a bunch of them. That's a truth about the Philippines. But I don't know. There's more to life than that. And the thing here is they're not like that here. They have self-respect, they have pride. Even girls that are struggling and on the poor end, they've got pride, and they're not gonna you're not gonna roll over them just because you got some gringo money. This is not Medellin, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the strength of character. But that's not to say, they're also very passionate people, and it's just not very difficult to, find dates here. It just isn't, it's just not it's not a same kind of environment. It's more organic. It's more realistic here, I think. I don't know how to explain it. No, brother, it's not the girl thing. Never had a problem with, well, I'm not saying for you. I'm just saying that's the big plus you can say about the Philippines. If that is something you're looking for, eat good healthy food. Well, you're going to find that most anywhere, including the U.S. and Canada. There's good healthy food pretty much everywhere. Ecuador, one of the downsides, chemicals are legal there. And it's hard to know when it's being used and when it's not. You had there's a town just south of Quito that turned into a cancer cluster because it was a big place. Everybody had potato farms in that area, and they were all using pesticides, and everybody was getting sick and getting tumors and all that kind of stuff. And so it went on for a number of years, but it's still legal. They can go to a hardware store and buy up some, toxic chemicals that are, banned in most of the world and still use it. Here you have organizations. You have you get certification. You can get, if you're a pork farmer, then you want to have a certification, which means they come in and they inspect your property and see how you're treating them and feeding them, and then you get that seal of approval and things like that. You know, things that protect you. And in Ecuador, you don't. I don't really want to just hammer on Ecuador. They're different countries, and you know, I guess there's some advantages to that. I don't know, but for some, maybe. Good afternoon. Is Cali a good place for young people? I mean, nightlife, nice girls and guys who love being outside and do fun stuff. Yeah. Cali is. It's a dancing city. It's a nightlife city. There's endless clubs there. But the Colombian people, almost anywhere you go, are fun-loving, outgoing, outdoorsy, partying kind of people to begin with. It's in their blood. The little town, this Pueblo Tapao, that I've fallen in love with, I might even move to next year. I don't know. It's this little town. I don't know the population, maybe 500 people. It's only got a main street, a couple little side streets. But I go there, they got 3 clubs, discos, whatever you want to call them. Here they tend to call them discos, but you know, music, dancing, girls, drinks, you know, whatever you want to call those. 3 in this little town. They've got a couple really nice restaurants. They've got a couple really decent, good sized bakeries in this little town. You know, it's just bustling with activity. And I don't know, that's Colombia. If you want a sleepy little town, that might be a little harder to find. In Armenia, you know, it's sort of sleepy, but it's also party. It depends. You know, if you want to have parties, you can go out there. They're here. I love the entrepreneurial spirit of Colombians. Me too. I love that about here. Everyone wants to be busy, always out there hustling and side hustling. Yeah. Craig, how you doing, Craig? Haven't seen you in a while. There's some very good, cool weather options in the Philippines. Yeah, that's true. Baguio is actually much cooler. So that's also true. If I were to live in the Philippines, it probably would be Baguio. A lot of similarities of people calling Medellin. Well, you know, they're Colombian, so it's similar in that way, but they're different. They're a different group of people. It's almost a different culture. So there'll be similarities, but you'll definitely see the difference. Experience them both, and then you tell me. You tell me what you saw. What about the language thing? Can someone who doesn't speak a word of Spanish get by? Well, you know, you're looking at them. I mean, I do now, but I didn't. It was never an issue for me. Also in the Philippines, you know, they're always saying that, you know, Spanish or English is their official language. The problem is very few people speak English, and even the ones that do, a lot of them you can't understand what they're trying to say. It's a bastardized version, and so you're going to have language issues in the Philippines also. And the places that are really targeting you, they're the ones that are going to be speaking the better English. And I'll say that here too. I mean, everybody comes and says, well, I want to get a doctor. I want to get a whatever it is, a real estate person that speaks English. Well, all you're doing is setting yourself up to pay more money. You know, I would not make that a criteria for anything that you're going to be spending money on. You'll be able to get by. Well, if nothing else, use Google on your phone. Everybody uses WhatsApp, so you can carry on conversations like that. People here are forgiving and patient. Love your answer on Colombia versus Ecuador. I envy farmers too. With the high ambition of Colombians, just influenced my decision to choose Colombia over Ecuador. Just hope I can find cheap fincas there too. Um, People in Ecuador like to come to Colombia to buy things because it's less expensive in Colombia than it is in Ecuador. I have a friend now. I actually dated her before I left, but she's a friend. I haven't seen her since I left Ecuador, and she messaged me last week. She wants to come and hang out, stay at my place for about 10 days. She's a nurse and she's on vacation, and she wants to buy up some things to take back with her. So, um, you know, things are readily available here, first of all, so you can get things here that you can't get there. Plus, there's a good chance it's going to be considerably less money here, and you don't have the big government tax on things. If you don't speak at least some Spanish, you'll have problems functioning. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It depends. You know, I'm not going to say that's not true because it can be true. It depends who you are. And, you know, I have to try to keep this in mind. From the time I was 19 years old, I started traveling to other countries with different languages. And through my life, I've traveled to several dozen countries. And I learned long ago how to express myself physically or pantomime or whatever, or learn certain keywords in order to get by. And it doesn't, I'm not embarrassed by it, so I'm not inhibited to doing those things. Therefore, it's always been okay. Now, that's not, it doesn't mean that for quite a while I couldn't sit down and have a real meaningful conversation. I couldn't. But there's ways around a lot of things these days that didn't exist before. I mean, 20 years ago when I came to Colombia, I didn't speak a word of Spanish, and the government who I was working for assigned somebody to translate who also didn't speak any English, supposedly did, but didn't. But back in those days, we didn't have the smartphones, so I had this, I remember it was this orange book about so big, and it was basically a Spanish to English, English to Spanish dictionary with some key phrases in it. And I about wore that thing out. And how difficult is that? Let me look up, okay, the next word, okay, the next word, the next word. And it doesn't put everything in the right order. Now you got Google Translate that's 5 or 6 years ago, it probably caused more problems than it solved. But now it's pretty functioning. I mean, you got to be careful. You have to enter in, the most basic way you can, but it's pretty good. But yeah, I would definitely make it a target of, trying to learn some Spanish. It depends on you of how much of a problem it'll be for you. Craig, as far as a bad reputation of Thailand, what other people back in your home country might think about you correctly or incorrectly shouldn't control your life decisions. No, you're right. And I thought about that. That was like the cherry on top of the thing for me. There was a number of things. I had a number of considerations, and that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was just one more. It's like, nah. So you're right. I mean, that should not be your primary consideration. To hell with them. And for me, I mean, that's the way it is. It's to hell with them. If it didn't have if all those other issues that I had weren't there, I would have ignored that. So it's a good point. I think we're going to end it here, but let's see. Okay, one more question. What would be a good budget to start out with? Thank you so much for your time. Maybe Mr. Alfredo will come see you soon. I don't know how to answer that. It depends on how you want to live. Can you live on $1,000? Yeah, I think unless you want to downscale your life pretty dramatically, I really think $1,200 to $1,600 and living in a place like Armenia is going to be pretty comfortable. I think in Medellin, where it's considerably more expensive, it's going to be, it'll be a little bit more difficult for you. You're not going to have some great big apartment. You have, like a small 1 or 2 bedroom. It depends. It depends on what's important to you. So it's an impossible thing to say. I mean, if you don't ever go out and all you ever eat is carrots, and you don't spend money on anything, then you could probably get by on $600. You don't really have a life. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. And plus, you can't get a visa. You got to have what, $800 or $900 a month to have a visa. But yeah, it really depends so much on what it is you're looking for. Sorry about my typos. I typo all the time if I'm using my phone. Okay. We're going to call it a day. It was 25 minutes. We went an hour and 25 minutes. It was a long one today. For those contributions, I thank you very much. Saw some new people. It was nice. I appreciate you being here. And to those who are in Ecuador and love it, sorry about that. I'm just speaking how I feel about it. I want, I've been saying this. I really want to get back, particularly for Christmas. I miss people there, and there's certain things I miss about it. I enjoyed my time there. I had a good life there. It just wasn't for me. Could be for you. Could be for you. I will say this, last thing I'll say on that is it takes a while for it to sink in of whether you're going to really like it long term or not. And I would say don't do anything permanent for at least a year, because you may decide at some point that it's just not right. Okay. Ciao. See you next Sunday.
Wow.